Commander Vexthel sat in the cold metal chair, his four massive arms shaking like autumn leaves. The tribunal room was dead quiet except for the soft buzz of recording machines. After 47 years of nightmares, he was finally ready to talk. His scarred face looked up at the 5 alien judges sitting behind their curved desk. Each one represented a different world, a different species that had lost sons and daughters in the Earth War. They all wanted answers. They all deserved the truth, even if it would haunt them forever. Commander Vexthel, the lead judge, spoke with her silvery voice. She was from Altair Prime, and her snake-like skin shimmered under the bright lights. Your silence has cost us dearly. Families across the galaxy still don't know what happened to their children. Vexthel's throat made a grinding sound as he swallowed hard. His species didn't cry, but if they could, he would have been sobbing. Judge Salandra, what I'm about to tell you will change how you see the universe. The humans. They're not like us. The judge from Kepler 442 leaned forward. His bug-like eyes clicked as they focused. Commander, 3 million soldiers went to Earth. Only 12,000 came back. Most of them were broken, useless. They spend their days in medical centers screaming about shadows and laughing humans. What did you encounter down there? The air in the room seemed to get thicker. Vexthel's breathing became heavy, and his massive chest rose and fell like a broken engine. We thought we were invading a primitive world. Our intelligence said humans were young, weak, with simple weapons. We were wrong about everything. He stood up slowly, his joints creaking from old battle wounds. The scars on his arms told stories of plasma burns and metal shrapnel. It started in their capital city, Seoul, beautiful place, full of lights and tall buildings. We expected their military to set up defensive walls, maybe some anti-aircraft guns. Standard stuff. Vexthel walked to the window and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth was still spinning, still full of those terrifying creatures called humans. Instead, we found Dongwu. The judges exchanged worried looks. They had never heard this name before. Dongwu was just a subway worker before we arrived. Fixed trains, cleaned tunnels, nothing special. But when we landed our ships in Seoul, he became something else entirely. Vexthel's voice dropped to a whisper, turned the entire underground train system into a death trap. Judge Salandra's scales changed color, a sign of nervousness in her species. Surely one human couldn't. One human with a plan is more dangerous than 1,000 soldiers without one, Vexthel interrupted. Dongwu knew every tunnel, every maintenance shaft, every weak point in the underground. He didn't fight us head-on. He made us chase him into the dark. Commander's forehands clenched into fists. My advance team was 200 of our best warriors. Elite soldiers who had conquered 6 worlds. They went into those tunnels confident and proud. Only 3 came back out and they weren't the same. What happened to them? Asked the judge from Proxima Centauri, his crystalline body vibrating with curiosity. They found bodies. Our bodies. But not just killed, arranged. Dongwu had positioned our dead soldiers like they were giving directions, pointing deeper into the tunnels. Their helmets were stacked in pyramids. Their weapons were bent into artistic shapes. It was like he was leaving us a message. The recording machines hummed louder, capturing every word of this impossible story. The 3 survivors told me about the sounds. Footsteps that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Laughter echoing through the tunnels. Human voices singing songs in their strange language. They said it felt like the underground itself was alive and hunting them. Vexthel turned back to face the tribunal. His eyes were wide and filled with remembered terror. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that Dongwu was enjoying himself. When we finally cornered him near the central station, he wasn't afraid. He was smiling. The judges sat in stunned silence. War was supposed to be serious, deadly business. The idea of someone finding joy in it was disturbing. He had 40 humans with him, all wearing the bright yellow vests of subway workers. They looked so ordinary, so harmless. But when the fighting started, Vexthel shuddered. They moved like they had been born for war. Every shot was perfect. Every movement was calculated. They turned maintenance tools into weapons and train cars into shields. How many did you lose? Judge Salandra asked quietly. In that one battle? 800 soldiers against 41 humans? Vextala's voice was barely audible now. And when it was over, when we had finally killed them all, we found Dongwu's body. He was still smiling. Even in death, he looked happy. The room fell silent, except for the steady hum of the recording devices, capturing every word of this nightmare testimony for history. Vexala's breathing became ragged as he moved to the next chapter of his nightmare. The judges noticed how his forearms wouldn't stop shaking, like he was still there, still living through those terrible days. After Seoul, High Command thought we had learned something about human tactics. They were wrong. Dead wrong. His voice cracked like broken glass. They sent me to Busan, a coastal city full of ships and factories. Intelligence said it would be easier than Seoul. No underground maze, just open streets and harbor areas. Judge Salandra leaned forward, her silver scales catching the light. What made Busan different? Hyangki. The name came out like a curse. Where Dongwu was a chess player, always thinking 3 moves ahead, Hyangki was an artist. He painted with destruction, and we were his canvas. Vextal walked to the holographic display in the center of the room. With trembling hands, he activated a map of Busan as it had been before the invasion. Beautiful blue harbor, neat rows of buildings, peaceful neighborhoods where human families had lived their simple lives. Hyangki used to manage the port authority. Boring job, pushing papers, scheduling ship arrivals. But when we landed our invasion force, he became something else entirely. He became death itself. The commander's voice grew quieter, more haunted. The first sign something was wrong came when our orbital scanners detected massive civilian movement. Entire neighborhoods were emptying out through tunnels we didn't know existed. We thought they were running away in panic. Weren't running. Away, interrupted the judge from Kepler 442, his bug eyes clicking nervously. No, they were getting out of Hyangki's way. He was clearing the battlefield so he could work without worrying about innocent people. Vextal's scarred face twisted into something that might have been respect. Even in war, even while planning our destruction, he protected his own people first. The holographic map shifted, showing the invasion fleet landing near the harbor. Hundreds of ships, thousands of soldiers, enough firepower to level the entire city. It should have been a quick victory. We advanced into the city in standard formation. Armor units on the main roads, infantry securing buildings, air support overhead, everything by the book. That's when Hyangki showed us that humans don't read the same books we do. Vextal manipulated the display, showing water rushing through streets like a blue tsunami. He didn't fight us with weapons first. He fought us with the city itself. Industrial pumps from the harbor began pushing seawater into the storm drains. Within minutes, the lower districts were flooded. But this wasn't clean ocean water. Hyangki had mixed it with chemicals from the port factories, acids that could eat through our armor, toxins that poisoned the air, substances that made our equipment malfunction just by touching it. The judges watched in horror as the display showed alien soldiers collapsing in the contaminated floods, their advanced technology failing them in the most basic way possible. My soldiers were drowning in 3 feet of poison water while buildings exploded around them. But that wasn't random destruction. Hyangki had timed every explosion perfectly, creating walls of rubble that pushed us exactly where he wanted us to go. Where was he hurting you? Asked the crystalline judge from Proxima Centauri. Into kill zones. Every street we thought was safe led to another trap. Every building we used for cover had been rigged with explosives. The humans had spent weeks preparing Busan for our arrival, turning their own city into a weapon pointed at us. Vextal's 4 hands clenched as he remembered the sounds of that day. Through all of this chaos, through the screaming of my dying soldiers, we kept hearing laughter. Human voices echoing off the buildings, carried by the poisoned water. They were having fun. That's impossible, Judge Salandra protested. No civilized species enjoys warfare. Humans aren't civilized like us. There's something else. Vextal's eyes grew distant, and leading the chemical warfare was a female named Somin. For the invasion, she worked in a fertilizer factory. Just a normal person with a normal job, but when war came, she became a master of death. The display showed complex diagrams of chemical mixing stations hidden throughout the city. Soman had turned every factory, every warehouse, every garage into a weapon production facility. She created poisons we had never seen before. Gases that could kill us through our breathing filters, liquids that made our skin burn just from contact. Our military scientists had studied warfare for centuries. So men learned how to kill us in 3 weeks, using nothing but industrial chemicals and human creativity. Bextel paused, his breathing heavy. When we finally tracked down Hyanki's command post, we expected to capture him and end the nightmare. We surrounded the building with 2,000 soldiers, our best remaining troops. "Did you succeed?" asked the judge from Kepler-442. Double quotes, Hyanki was waiting for us on the roof. 43 humans, all that remained of his force. They were trapped. Outnumbered with no hope of escape. Any rational species would have surrendered. The commander's voice dropped to a whisper. Instead, Hyanki smiled at us, actually smiled. Then he pressed a button that brought down half the remaining city. The explosion was so massive it registered on seismic equipment 300 miles away. He killed himself. He killed himself. His 43 followers and 800 of my soldiers, because he chose mutual destruction over the possibility that we might win. Bextel stared at the judges with haunted eyes. That's when I understood the truth about humans. They don't just fight to win. They fight to make sure their enemies can never feel safe again. The recording devices captured every word as the tribunal sat in stunned silence, trying to comprehend a species that could find joy in such calculated destruction. Bextel's massive frame seemed to shrink as he prepared to relive the mountain campaign. His forearms wrapped around himself like he was trying to hold his sanity together. The judges had never seen a Krillian warrior look so broken. High Command pulled me out of Busan. After we lost half our invasion force, he began, his voice barely above a whisper. They said the mountains would be different. Clean air, simple terrain, scattered human settlements. They promised it would. Be a chance to recover, to rebuild our confidence. Judge Salandra's scales had turned a worried shade of blue, but it wasn't. The mountains were worse than the cities, much worse. Vexel activated the holographic display again, showing the beautiful Korean mountain ranges. Snow-capped peaks, dense forests, winding trails that looked peaceful and innocent. In the cities, we could see our enemies. The mountains, the enemies were everywhere and nowhere at once. The display shifted to show military positions, red dots marking where alien forces had been stationed. One by one, the dots began disappearing. Taeho used to lead hiking tours through these mountains. Families would pay him to show them hidden waterfalls and scenic viewpoints. He knew every rock, every tree, every cave that hadn't been mapped by our orbital scanners. Vexel's breathing became ragged as he continued. When we first encountered his resistance, we didn't even know we were under attack. Patrol teams would just vanish. 12 soldiers would go out on a routine sweep. 6 hours later, we'd find their communication equipment neatly stacked beside the trail, but no sign of the soldiers themselves. Where were the bodies? The judge from Kepler-442, his bug eyes reflecting the holographic light. That was the terrifying part. We'd find them eventually. Sometimes days later, sometimes weeks. Always in places that should have been impossible to reach. Taeho would position them like they were still on patrol, still following their orders, but they'd be sitting around a campfire that had been cold for days. The commander's forehands trembled as he manipulated the display. Our soldiers started calling them ghost patrols, bodies arranged like they were having a conversation or sharing a meal or playing cards. All perfectly preserved by the mountain cold, all staring at nothing with empty eyes. Some kind of psychological warfare? Judge Salandra suggested. Exactly, but it was working. My remaining troops were afraid to leave base camp. They'd rather face court-martial than go into those mountains. And Taeho knew it was working, because sometimes we'd find messages carved into trees near the ghost patrols. Simple human words. Welcome to our home. The display showed the mountain terrain in detail. revealing how Taeho had used the natural landscape to his advantage. Humans moved through difficult terrain like they were born for it. Places where our heavy equipment got stuck, they could run at full speed. Cliff faces that took us hours to climb with ropes and gear, they'd scale in minutes using just their hands and feet. Our thermal sensors were useless because they knew how to mask their body heat. Our motion detectors couldn't track them because they moved like the wind itself. It wasn't technology defeating technology. It was nature defeating science. Vexla paused, staring at the holographic mountains with haunted eyes. But Taeho wasn't working alone. He had help from someone even more dangerous. A human female named Yoonji. The temperature in the tribunal chamber seemed to drop as Vextel spoke her name. Yoonji had been a nurse before the invasion. She understood how minds work, how bodies heal, how fear spreads through a group. She turned medical knowledge into a weapon more powerful than any plasma rifle. How? Asked the crystalline judge, his voice vibrating with curiosity and dread. She captured our wounded soldiers. It's not to kill them, but to heal them. Her medical teams would find our injured troops after Taeho's ambushes and provide perfect medical care, better than our own field hospitals. They'd treat infections, set broken bones, even perform surgery when necessary. The judges exchanged confused looks. It sounded like mercy, not warfare. Then they'd release the healed soldiers back to our lines, acts of kindness, we thought. Proof that some humans still had honor. Vextel's laugh was bitter and broken. We were so wrong. The returned soldiers came back, changed. Not physically. Youngji's medical work was flawless. But mentally, they were different. During their recovery, she had talked to them. Gentle conversations about their families, their fears, their military training. Learned everything about us. She was gathering intelligence, Judge Salandra realized. More than that. She was studying us like laboratory specimens. Every returned soldier carried back detailed knowledge about our weaknesses, our equipment failures, our tactical preferences, but they didn't know they were carrying it. Youngji had programmed the information into their subconscious minds. Display showed complex psychological profiles, diagrams of alien military doctrine, detailed analyses of equipment vulnerabilities, all gathered through what appeared to be acts of medical mercy. Within weeks, human resistance forces knew our battle plans before we did. They could predict our movements, exploit our equipment failures, and counter our tactics before we even deployed them. Yoonji had turned our own soldiers into unwilling spies. Vextel stood and walked to the window, staring out at the stars. The worst part was watching our military doctrine crumble. Everything we had learned about warfare over thousands of years became useless. The humans fought like they had already studied us for centuries, like our defeat was simply a mathematical certainty they were patiently calculating. Our generals started making desperate decisions, abandoning proven strategies for wild gambles. But nothing worked. Every move we made had already been anticipated, countered, turned against us. The commander turned back to face the tribunal, his scarred face showing the full weight of his memories. That's when I realized the truth about humans. They don't just fight wars. They learn from them. Every battle makes them stronger, smarter, more dangerous. We were teaching them how to destroy us, and they were excellent students. The tribunal chamber grew colder as Vextel began the most terrifying part of his testimony. His four massive arms hung limp at his sides, and his warrior's posture had completely collapsed. The judges had never seen Acrylian look so defeated. Everything changed when we started the Great Retreat, Vextel whispered, his voice like wind through a graveyard. High Command ordered us to pull back to defensible positions, regroup our forces, and prepare for a proper campaign. We thought we were making a tactical withdrawal. Judge Salandra's silver scales had turned almost black with worry. What happened during the retreat? We discovered that we weren't retreating at all. We were being hunted. Vextel activated the holographic display, showing a map of Korea with red arrows marking alien withdrawal routes. That's when Ginwoo revealed himself. The display zoomed in on mountainous terrain where convoys of alien vehicles had been moving through narrow passes. Jinwoo had been a delivery driver before the invasion. He knew every road, every shortcut, every place where traffic might slow down. But during the war, he became something else entirely. "What do you mean?" asked the judge from Kepler 442, his compound eyes reflecting the holographic light. "He became a predator." Ginwu led a rapid response team of 50 humans who moved through the countryside faster than our anti-gravity vehicles. They didn't attack our strong points or challenge our main forces. Instead, they hunted our supply, lines like wolves picking off wounded prey. Vextel's breathing became heavy as he relived those nightmare weeks. Our supply convoys would leave the main base fully loaded with food, ammunition, and fuel. They'd follow secure routes protected by escort vehicles and air support. But they never reached their destinations. "Were they destroyed in battle?" Judge Salandra asked. "No, they just disappeared. Completely investigation teams would find empty roads where entire convoys had vanished without a trace. No explosion craters, no burned vehicles, no signs of struggle. Just empty pavement and the terrifying knowledge that hundreds of our soldiers had simply ceased to exist." The holographic display showed aerial footage of these empty roads, stretching through beautiful countryside that had become a nightmare landscape for the alien forces. Jinwu's team would strike like lightning, disable our vehicles, capture our supplies, and vanish before our response teams could arrive. But they never left evidence of how they did it. Later, we discovered they were using the captured supplies against us. Our own food poisoned our soldiers. Our own ammunition was modified to explode in our weapons. Our own fuel was contaminated to destroy our vehicles from the inside. Vextel's 4 hands clenched into fists. Jinwu had turned our entire supply chain into a weapon pointed at ourselves. The commander manipulated the display to show communication intercepts, streams of data flowing between human resistance cells. But Ginwu wasn't working alone. He was coordinated by a human female named the Gin, who had somehow become a master of electronic warfare. Before the invasion, the Jin worked at a telecommunications company, fixing internet connections and installing phone lines. Basic technical work, nothing military. But when war came, she discovered she had a gift for breaking into our most secure communication systems. The judges leaned forward as Vexel continued his impossible story. The Gin could intercept our military orders before they reached our field commanders. She knew where we were going before we did. She understood our tactical plans better than the generals who created them. "How is that possible?" asked the crystalline judge from Proxima Centauri. "Human brains work differently than ours. Where we see complex military encryption, they see patterns and puzzles. The Jinn treated our security codes like games to be solved. Within weeks, she was reading our communications in real time, editing our orders, and sending false information to our troops." The display showed the chaos that resulted from compromised communications. Units moving to wrong positions, supplies being delivered to empty locations, reinforcements arriving at battles that had already ended. We were fighting blind while the humans could see everything. Every move we made was known, anticipated, and countered before we could complete it. Vextel walked to the center of the room, his massive frame casting shadows across the holographic battlefield. But the worst was yet to come. A human named Junho began what they called their counter-offensive. Another civilian turned. Warrior, Judge Salandra guessed. Junho had been a city planner before the invasion. His job was designing traffic flows, organizing construction projects, making sure large populations could move efficiently through urban spaces. Boring work, we thought. We were wrong. The display transformed to show a 3-dimensional map of the entire Korean peninsula, with alien forces marked in red and human positions in blue. Junho looked at our retreat and saw something we missed. He saw that we weren't really retreating randomly. We were following predictable patterns, choosing defensive positions that made sense from a military standpoint. "So he used your own logic against you," realized the judge from Kepler 442. "Exactly. Every retreat route we selected led us deeper, into carefully prepared kill zones. Every defensive position we chose had already been surrounded by hidden human forces. We thought we were making smart tactical decisions, but we were actually following a script that Junho had written months earlier." Vexel's voice grew quieter, more haunted. The humans had spent years studying warfare, Not just their own military history, but ours as well. They knew how we thought, how we moved, how we made decisions under pressure. Junho had used that knowledge to turn our own military training against us. The counteroffensive wasn't a battle, it was a harvest. Junho's forces didn't attack us directly. They simply positioned themselves along our retreat routes and waited for us to walk into their traps. Like farmers collecting grain, they gathered up our scattered forces one unit at a time. The holographic display showed the systematic collapse of the alien invasion force, unit after unit being captured or destroyed in precisely orchestrated engagements. We weren't fighting an enemy anymore. We were being processed by a machine designed specifically to destroy us. And through it all, Vexel continued, his voice breaking. We could hear them laughing. Human voices carried on the wind, joyful sounds echoing across battlefields soaked with alien blood. They were having the time of their lives. The commander turned to face the tribunal, his eyes reflecting the horror of those final weeks. That's when I understood the ultimate truth about humans. War isn't something they do reluctantly, like civilized species. War is something they excel at, something they enjoy, something they've been perfecting for their entire existence as a species. The planet Earth itself had become a weapon. Every mountain, every valley, every river had been turned into part of their killing machine. And we were just the latest test subjects in their ongoing experiment with violence. The recording devices hummed steadily, capturing every word of this testimony that would change how the galaxy viewed humanity forever. The tribunal chamber fell completely silent as Vextel prepared to reveal the final, most disturbing chapter of his testimony. His 4 massive arms had stopped shaking, replaced by a stillness that was somehow even more terrifying. The judges could see that whatever came next would haunt them forever. By the end of the 3rd month, we had lost everything. Vextel began, his voice like a dying whisper. 3 million soldiers reduced to barely 8,000 survivors, scattered across a planet that had become our living nightmare. We were hiding in caves, abandoned buildings, anywhere the humans might not find us. Judge Salandra's scales had turned completely black, a sign of deep distress in her species. Where was your final stronghold? In the mountains north of Seoul? Inside what used to be a mining complex? We thought it was perfect. Underground tunnels, multiple escape routes, natural defenses. Our sensors showed no human activity for miles around. Vextel's laugh was bitter and broken. We actually believed we had found a place they didn't know about. The holographic display showed the mountain stronghold, a complex network of tunnels carved deep into solid rock. Red dots marked the positions of the last alien survivors, huddled together like frightened children. We had been there for 2 weeks, treating our wounded, trying to contact the fleet for evacuation. Some of my officers were talking about Stan's final battles, dying with honor. Then she appeared. She asked the judge from Kepler 442 Myung, a human female who walked into our most secure facility like she was visiting friends. Vextel manipulated the display, showing the tunnel entrance where their most sophisticated security systems had been installed. She came alone, unarmed, carrying a white flag of truce. How did she get past your defenses? That's what made it so terrifying. She didn't sneak past our guards or hack our systems. She simply walked up to our main entrance and asked to speak with our commander. Sensors showed she was completely alone. No weapons, no backup forces. Just one small human female standing in front of an army of desperate alien soldiers. Vextel's breathing became labored as he continued. My guards brought her to the command center, and I got my first close look at a human face. She was young, maybe 30 of their years, with calm eyes and a gentle smile. She looked like she could have been a teacher or a nurse, not a warrior. What did she want? Judge Salandra asked. To offer us safe passage home. All of us. Wounded, the healthy, even our dead for proper burial on our homeworlds, complete amnesty, medical care during the journey, and guarantee of safe arrival. Vextel stared at the holographic display. It sounded too good to be true. The judges exchanged confused glances. After everything they had heard, this seemed almost reasonable. I asked her why. Why offer mercy to invaders who had come to conquer their world? Why not just finish what they had started and kill us all? Vextel's forehands clenched into fists. Her answer changed everything I thought I knew about warfare. What did she say? She smiled, actually smiled, and said, "Because we want you to go home and tell everyone what happened here. We want the galaxy to know what happens when you come to our home uninvited." Vextel's voice cracked, and she added something. "That still wakes me up screaming." The tribunal chamber was so quiet they could hear the hum of the recording devices. She said, "This was just our warm-up. We've been fighting each other for thousands of years. Fighting you was... refreshing." Vexel stood up, pacing like a caged animal. She talked about human history, about wars they had fought against themselves, conflicts that lasted decades, weapons that could destroy entire cities, battles where millions died in single days. And she said all of this while smiling, asked the crystalline judge, like she was discussing the weather. Mi-young explained that humans had been perfecting the art of warfare for their entire existence as a species. Every generation found new ways to kill, new strategies to win, new technologies to destroy their enemies more efficiently. The holographic display shifted to show human historical battles, medieval knights, ancient armies, modern warfare with tanks and aircraft. She showed us images of their past conflicts, and I realized something horrible. Everything they had done to us, they had first done to each other. The psychological warfare, the guerrilla tactics, the complete disregard. For acceptable losses, these weren't new innovations. They were lessons learned from thousands of years of fighting themselves. Vextel collapsed back into his chair, looking older than his 800 years. As we loaded our survivors onto the evacuation ships, Mi-young stood at the spaceport. Watching us leave, she wasn't celebrating victory or mourning their losses. She looked satisfied, like they had just completed a successful training exercise. She came to see us off personally, and her final words to me were the most terrifying thing I've ever heard. She said, "Thank you for the practice. When we're ready to leave our home system, we'll know exactly what to expect from the galaxy." The judges sat in stunned silence as the implications sank in. "Don't you understand?" Vextel's voice rose to a shout. "The humans didn't defeat us. They studied us. We were never an invasion force. We were a learning opportunity. Every battle, every tactic, every weakness they discovered was filed away for future use. And now they're expanding into space, making diplomatic contact with other species, joining galactic civilization. Everyone thinks it's wonderful, a young species ready to contribute to galactic peace." Vextel stood and walked to the window, staring out at the stars. But I know the truth. The humans are still learning. Every diplomatic meeting, every trade negotiation, every cultural exchange is just another chance for them to study potential enemies. They showed mercy to us because it served their long-term strategy. They wanted survivors to spread fear, to make the galaxy cautious about challenging them. But when mercy no longer serves their purposes, the commander turned back to face the tribunal one final time. The families who lost sons and daughters in the Earth's campaign ask why their children never came home. The answer is simple. We encountered a species that had spent millennia perfecting the art of killing their own kind. We were never soldiers to them. We were just another experiment in their ongoing research into violence. Part of all, they're still learning. Every day they grow stronger, smarter, more dangerous. The galaxy celebrates human diplomacy and cooperation, but I've seen what they're truly capable of. Vextel walked toward the exit, his testimony complete. Pray to whatever gods you worship that humanity never decides the galaxy needs to be taught a lesson. Because when that day comes, we'll discover that our 3 million soldiers weren't the invasion force. They were the entrance exam. The recording devices continued humming as Vextel left the chamber, his footsteps echoing in the silence. The judges sat motionless, processing the implications of what they had heard. Somewhere in the galaxy, humanity was making friends and building alliances. While the universe remained blissfully unaware of what lurked beneath their peaceful facade, the war for Earth hadn't been a battle between civilizations. It had been a species preparing for something much larger, much more terrifying. and they had just passed their first test with flying colors, the ND.